The golden dunes of the Sahel stretch endlessly under the blazing sun, a sea of sand that seems timeless, yet beneath these shifting waves lie secrets waiting to be uncovered. For centuries, the wind has whispered over buried cities, their stories muffled by layers of dust and time. These forgotten places were once bustling hubs of trade, culture, and innovation, where caravans carried gold, salt, and ideas across vast distances. Now they sleep beneath the earth, their voices faint but persistent, calling out to those who listen. What if these ruins could speak? What tales would they tell of empires risen and fallen, of communities that thrived against the odds, of human ingenuity shaped by the harsh beauty of the desert? This is more than just a story of lost cities. It's a window into how civilizations adapt, endure, and sometimes vanish without a trace. The Sahel's buried echoes challenge us to rethink what we know about history's forgotten chapters. How did these communities flourish in such an unforgiving landscape? What forces led to their disappearance? And most intriguingly, what clues do they leave behind about resilience, trade, and the interconnectedness of ancient worlds? The answers aren't just locked in the past, they're etched into the very ground beneath our feet, waiting for the right tools and curiosity to bring them back to light. Today, we're embarking on a journey to uncover these mysteries, guided by the latest breakthroughs in archaeology and technology. From ground-penetrating radar revealing hidden structures to satellite imagery spotting patterns invisible to the naked eye, modern science is peeling back the layers of sand and time. Together, we'll explore how these advancements are rewriting history, piece by piece, and what these rediscovered cities can teach us about our shared human story. The dunes may guard their secrets fiercely, but the echoes beneath them are growing louder, and it's time we listened. The Sahel is a land of contrasts, where the relentless Sahara meets the life-giving savanna in a delicate dance of survival. This narrow belt of semi-arid terrain stretches across Africa like a fragile bridge, its sandy soils and sparse vegetation hiding more than meets the eye. The very conditions that make this region harsh for modern life, the scorching heat, the unpredictable rains, the ever-creeping dunes have acted as nature's time capsule, sealing away entire cities beneath layers of dust. In places like Mali's legendary Timbuktu, Niger's remote Jodo Plateau, and Chad's sweeping Ennedi Massif, the earth has guarded its secrets for centuries, revealing them only in fleeting glimpses when the wind shifts just right. What makes these locations so extraordinary isn't just what's been found, it's how the land itself shaped the civilizations that once thrived here. The Sahel wasn't a barrier but a crossroads, where camel caravans navigated invisible highways between oases, trading gold for salt, ideas for innovations. The cities that rose here were masterpieces of adaptation, built with sun-baked bricks to withstand the heat, designed with intricate water systems to capture every precious drop. Yet their downfall often came from the same force that sustained them, the climate. As droughts lengthened and sands advanced, wells ran dry, trade routes faltered, and once bustling streets were swallowed by the desert's slow march. Now, as archaeologists piece together these fragments of the past, they're uncovering a startling truth. The Sahel's lost cities weren't isolated outposts but part of a vast, interconnected network. A broken pottery shard in Niger might trace back to workshops in Mauritania. Glass beads buried in Chad could reveal trade links stretching all the way to the Mediterranean. Each discovery peels back another layer, showing how ingenuity flourished even in this unforgiving land. And just beyond these findings lies an even greater revelation. the first of these forgotten metropolises to be rediscovered, a city whose ruins rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Sahara's hidden heartbeat. Timbuktu stands as one of history's most captivating paradoxes, a city shrouded in both myth and magnificent reality. At its peak during the Mali Empire in the 14th century, it wasn't just a stop on the trade routes but a beacon of knowledge and wealth, where scholars and merchants from across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe converged. The stories of its golden age aren't exaggerations. Caravans heavy with gold from the south exchanged their treasures for salt mined in the Sahara's heart, while libraries overflowed with manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, their pages filled with insights that rivaled the great centers of learning in Baghdad and Cordoba. This wasn't just a desert outpost, it was a crossroads of civilizations. Yet Timbuktu's brilliance also sealed its fate in the European imagination. As the city's influence waned due to shifting trade routes, political upheaval, and the encroaching desert, it transformed from a real metropolis into a whispered legend. Explorers spoke of a place so rich that its roofs were said to be clad in gold, a fantasy that lured adventurers into the Sahara's deadly embrace. For centuries, Timbuktu became less a city and more a metaphor for the unattainable, a symbol of the mysteries hidden beyond the known world. Even today, its name evokes a sense of wonder, though the truth is far more remarkable than the myths. What's often overlooked is how Timbuktu's legacy defies stereotypes about Africa's past. Its libraries, like the legendary Sankore Madrasa, weren't just repositories of knowledge but active centers of scholarship where mathematicians calculated the orbits of planets and jurists debated laws that governed empires. The city's decline didn't erase this heritage. Thousands of manuscripts survived, hidden in chests and buried in desert caves, waiting for modern researchers to piece together their stories. These fragile pages reveal a sophistication that challenges old narratives, proving that the Sahel was never a cultural backwater, but a vibrant participant in the global exchange of ideas. Timbuktu's tale is just the beginning. Beyond its dunes lie dozens of other lost cities, each with its own secrets. Some, like Ghana's ancient Kumbi, by Sahel or Mauritania's ghostly Ayuda coast, were once rivals in wealth and influence. Others remain nameless, their outlines barely visible beneath the sand. Together, they form a puzzle, one that's slowly coming into focus as archaeologists uncover their buried past. The next chapter of this story lies even deeper in the desert, where a recently unearthed city is rewriting our understanding of the Sahara's forgotten empires. While Timbuktu's scholarly splendor captured imaginations, another Sahelian giant rose to power just downstream along the Niger River, Gao, the beating heart of the mighty Songhai Empire. Unlike its famed neighbor, Gao wasn't just a center of learning but a political juggernaut, where emperors plotted conquests that would stretch their domain across 2,000 miles of West Africa. The river that curled around Gao's sun-baked streets wasn't merely a source of water. It was a liquid highway carrying gold-laden boats from the forests of the south and salt caravans from the northern deserts to its bustling docks. At its zenith in the 15th century, this was where the continent's wealth converged, where a single trading season could see enough gold change hands to destabilize Mediterranean economies. Recent excavations have peeled back layers of sediment to reveal Gao's startling sophistication. French and Malian archaeologists mapping the Gaounzari quarter uncovered foundations of multi-story buildings with intricate drainage systems, proof of urban planning that rivaled contemporary European cities. Among the rubble, they found porcelain fragments from China, Venetian glass beads, and copper ingots traced to mines 700 miles away. These weren't just random imports but evidence of a trade network so precise that Songhai merchants could calculate exchange rates between cowrie shells, gold dust, and salt blocks across 3 continents. The most telling discovery, a brass ceremonial staff topped with a horseman figure, unearthed near what was once the imperial palace, a silent testament to the cavalry forces that made Songhai the region's undisputed military power. What made Gao extraordinary wasn't just its wealth but its adaptability. When Arab geographer al-Muhalabi visited in the 10th century, he described a city already thriving with markets held at night under torchlight, where Berber nomads bartered alongside blacksmiths from the south. 4 centuries later, under Emperor Suni Ali's ruthless genius, Gao became the nucleus of an administration so efficient that tax collectors could extract tribute from remote villages without rebellion. The empire's secret lay in its hybrid identity, part desert warrior culture, part riverine agricultural society, allowing it to control both Saharan trade routes and fertile floodplains. This duality shows in the ruins. One district's mosque stands with distinctive Saharan minarets, while another's granaries mirror traditional Niger Valley designs. Yet Gao's story raises broader questions about the Sahel's layered history. Before the Songhai, this was Ghana Empire territory. After its fall, Moroccan invaders left their mark. How many other empires cycled through these sands, each adding another stratum to the region's cultural DNA? The answer might lie 30 miles northeast at Gao Seni, where crumbling towers hint at a pre-Songhai civilization that mastered arcane metallurgy. As ground-penetrating radar reveals new structures beneath the dunes, we're left wondering what other forgotten capitals still wait beneath the Sahel's shifting surface, their stories whispering on the desert wind. Far to the southwest of Timbuktu and Gao, where the Sahel's golden hues fade into scrubland, lie the scattered bones of Kumbi Saleh, once the glittering capital of the Ghana Empire. Unlike its better-known successors, this 8th-century marvel wasn't built on riverside trade but on something far more precious: control of the Sahara's gold and salt routes. Imagine a city where merchants weighed gold dust against slabs of salt on scales so precise that Arab chroniclers claimed its king could outfit an army with just the gold dust shaken from his subjects' hair each Friday. For 300 years, Kumbi Saleh thrived as the economic engine of West Africa, its wealth so legendary that medieval maps marked it with towers of ivory. Yet today, its ruins sprawl half-buried beneath the Mauritanian sands, their grandeur reduced to faint outlines of walls and the occasional glint of pottery shards. What makes Kumbi Saleh's story so compelling isn't just its rise, it's the eerie silence of its fall. Unlike cities ravaged by war or natural disaster, this metropolis seems to have simply dissolved. Archaeologists sifting through its ruins find no layers of ash from sacked buildings, no mass graves from plagues. Instead, they uncover orderly streets where doors were left ajar, workshops abandoned mid-task, and granaries still holding their last harvest. The prevailing theory, a perfect storm of drought and shifting trade routes, slowly starved the city of its lifeblood. As the Sahara inched southward, wells ran dry, and caravans began bypassing Kumbi Saleh for more reliable oases. The final blow may have been political. When the Almoravid dynasty swept through in the 11th century, they didn't burn the city. They simply rendered it obsolete by redirecting gold traffic to newly conquered territories. Recent digs have cracked open long-held assumptions about West Africa's medieval economy. French Mauritanian teams using magnetometry have mapped a sprawling suburban belt where foreign merchants lived in distinct quarters, North Africans in stone houses with intricate plasterwork, local Sonink in circular mud brick compounds. This wasn't just a trading post, but a cosmopolitan melting pot where business contracts were etched onto ostrich eggshells and leather scrolls. Most revealing are the thousands of copper fragments found near the old market plaza. Chemical analysis traces them to mines in modern-day Morocco, proving the Ghana Empire's reach extended far earlier and farther than historians believed. These tiny metal scraps whisper of a trade network so sophisticated that it could move raw materials across 1,500 miles of desert, then transform them into luxury goods coveted from Cordoba to Cairo. Yet for all we've learned, Kumbi Saleh guards its deepest secrets stubbornly. The royal quarter, described by Arab travelers as a walled compound with domed palaces, remains elusive beneath the dunes. Local guides swear they've seen stone foundations after particularly fierce winds, but by the time archaeologists arrive, the sands have reclaimed them. This vanishing act makes the city a metaphor for the entire Sahel's buried history, always almost within grasp, then gone like a mirage. Just when we think we understand the region's urban blueprint, another discovery upends everything. 400 miles southeast of Kumbi Saleh, near the Niger River's bend, lies a far stranger ruin, a city built not by empires but by copper. The smelting pits of Tegdayost glow green with oxidation even after a millennium, its workshops once producing enough metal to supply half the Sahara. Here, the rules of Sahelian civilization seem rewritten instead of kings and caravans. This was a place where artisans held sway, their furnaces burning day and night to fuel an industrial revolution lost to time. While empires like Ghana and Songhai built their power on gold and conquest, the ruins of Gen-Geno tell a radically different story, one that appends everything we thought we knew about how cities begin. Nestled where the Niger and Bani rivers meet in modern Mali, this 2,000-year-old settlement wasn't ruled by kings or warriors but thrived as a collective experiment in urban living. Imagine a city without palaces or monuments, where neighborhoods organized themselves around shared craft specialties, ironworkers here, potters there, trading goods through networks that stretched from the Sahara to the rainforest. For 800 years, Gen-Geno flourished not through top-down control, but through something far more revolutionary: cooperation. The discovery of Gen-Geno in the 1970s sent shockwaves through archaeology. Before its excavation, scholars assumed African urban centers required outside influence, Arab traders or Mediterranean ideas to develop. But here was proof of an indigenous city that predated Islam by a millennium, its origins rooted in local ingenuity. Digs revealed no evidence of a ruling class, no grand tombs, no fortifications, no treasure hoards. Instead, they uncovered neighborhoods of circular mud brick houses clustered around open courtyards, their layouts suggesting egalitarian social structures. The real wealth lay in the workshops, piles of iron slag proving advanced metallurgy, kilns producing pottery so distinctive it became a trade currency across West Africa. This wasn't just a town, it was an economic powerhouse built on collective enterprise. What truly sets Gen-Geno apart is how it defies the classic models of ancient urbanism. Unlike Mesopotamia's temple-centered cities or Rome's imperial grid, this was a city that grew organically, adapting to its environment rather than dominating it. Farmers cultivated flood-resistant rice varieties in the Niger's marshes, while fishers and herders exchanged goods at seasonal markets. The lack of centralized authority didn't mean chaos, it meant resilience. When droughts came or trade routes shifted, Gen-Geno's flexible structure allowed it to adapt where rigid hierarchies might have collapsed. Yet even this ingenious society couldn't withstand the Sahel's changing climate. By the 13th century, as the region grew drier and the rivers became less predictable, Gen-Geno's residents began migrating to nearby Jenné, where a new urban center was rising. But the legacy of their experiment endured. The techniques they pioneered, floodplain agriculture, decentralized trade networks, became blueprints for later Sahelian cities. Today, their story challenges our deepest assumptions about civilization itself, proving that urbanization doesn't require pyramids or emperors, just people finding smarter ways to live together. As we peel back these layers of history, another question emerges. If Gen-Geno's decline was tied to environmental shifts, what lessons does it hold for our own era of climate uncertainty? The answer might lie in the ruins of a city that thrived where others failed, not by conquering nature, but by learning to dance with its rhythms. The shifting sands that swallowed the Sahel's cities weren't just capricious acts of nature, they were the culmination of climate patterns that still echo today. Sediment cores drilled from ancient lakebeds tell a stark story. Layers of fertile soil abruptly giving way to fine dust, marking moments when rains failed and droughts stretched into decades. Near the ruins of Kumbi Saleh, scientists found pollen samples frozen in time, evidence of lush savannas that vanished as the Sahara marched southward around the year 1000. These weren't isolated events. Arab chronicles from the 12th century describe caravans abandoning traditional routes as wells dried up, while oral histories from Mali speak of years when the Niger River ran so low that fish could be gathered by hand. The very forces that buried these cities weren't sudden catastrophes but slow, insistent pressures, a lesson that resonates uncomfortably with our own era of rising temperatures and vanishing water tables. What makes these ancient climate shifts so revealing is how precisely they mirror modern satellite data. When researchers compared sediment records from Lake Chad with 21st century observations, they spotted eerily similar pattern cycles of expansion and contraction in the desert's edge, each fluctuation tied to subtle changes in ocean temperatures half a world away. The difference, where past civilizations had no warning before drought struck, today's technologies let us see the crisis coming. Yet the parallels remain haunting. Just as medieval Gao relied on intricate water storage systems to survive dry spells, contemporary cities from Bamako to Nouakchott now drill deeper wells and build desalination plants, fighting the same relentless advance of sand. The silver lining lies in how modern archaeology is turning climate tragedy into historical insight. LiDAR scanners mounted on drones now map buried city walls invisible to the naked eye, while ground-penetrating radar reveals how ancient engineers adapted their designs as water sources dwindled. At the lost city of Teikta in Niger, researchers found a network of underground channels, some clogged with wind-blown sand in their final years, that once funneled every precious raindrop into cisterns. These aren't just artifacts, they're case studies in resilience, showing how societies either innovated or collapsed when faced with environmental change. Perhaps the most profound discovery isn't in the soil, but in the stories these ruins tell about human flexibility. When Gen-Geno's residents migrated to higher ground as floods worsened, they carried their knowledge with them, seeding new urban centers. When Kumbi Saleh's traders pivoted from salt to slaves under ecological pressure, they revealed the uncomfortable choices civilizations sometimes make to survive. As we face our own climate crossroads, these echoes from the past offer no easy answers, just a reminder that the dunes have buried countless attempts to outwit nature, but they've also preserved proof of our endless capacity to adapt. Now, armed with satellites and machine learning, we're not just uncovering lost cities, we're decoding their survival strategies, one grain of sand at a time. Satellites orbiting 400 miles above Earth have become unlikely allies in uncovering the Sahel's buried past. These high-tech sentinels don't just capture images, they detect subtle variations in vegetation growth, soil moisture, and even surface temperature, revealing ghostly outlines of walls and streets invisible from the ground. In Mauritania's Adrar region, a NASA-funded team spotted a sprawling network of rectangular formations beneath the sand, later confirmed as the medieval trading hub of Aouda Coast. The same technology that monitors modern crop yields and deforestation is now mapping ancient urban grids lost for centuries, proving that the tools of our future are key to understanding our past. But satellites are just the first step. When archaeologists need to see beneath the surface without moving a single grain of sand, they turn to LiDAR laser pulses fired from aircraft that bounce back to create precise 3D maps of the terrain. In Mali's Dogon country, this technology peeled back dense vegetation to expose stone terraces and granaries from the Toloi culture, dating back 3,000 years. What makes LiDAR revolutionary isn't just its precision but its efficiency. A single flight can survey areas that would take ground teams decades to document. The resulting images resemble eerie green-blue landscapes where the slightest bumps in the terrain transform into the foundations of long-vanished homes and temples. Ground-penetrating radar takes the exploration even deeper, sending radio waves into the earth to map buried structures like an ultrasound for the soil. At Niger's Marandit ruins, this technique revealed an entire copper smelting district beneath 6 feet of sand, complete with furnaces and workshops arranged in a semicircular pattern. These tools don't just save time, they protect fragile sites from unnecessary excavation. In a region where summer temperatures regularly hit 120 degrees and sandstorms can erase a dig site in hours, every non-invasive discovery matters. Yet these advancements come with their own challenges. Satellite images require expert interpretation. What looks like a city wall might be a natural rock formation. LiDAR struggles with the Sahel's shifting dunes, which scatter its laser pulses unpredictably, and ground-penetrating radar falters in areas with high mineral content, where signals get lost in the Earth's own static. Despite these hurdles, the results are rewriting history books. The recent discovery of a fortified settlement in southern Mauritania, complete with concentric defensive walls, suggests the region hosted complex societies a full millennium earlier than previously thought. What excites researchers most isn't just what's been found, it's what remains hidden. With only 5% of the Sahel systematically surveyed, each new scan could unveil another missing chapter of human ingenuity. Could the next breakthrough reveal a city to rival Timbuktu, or a previously unknown empire whose trade networks span the continent? As these technologies grow more sophisticated, one thing becomes clear: the desert's greatest secrets aren't lost, just waiting for the right tools to bring them back into the light. While satellites and ground-penetrating radar reveal the physical bones of lost cities, the soul of these places lives on in the voices of Griots, West Africa's revered storytellers and oral historians. For centuries, these custodians of memory have preserved the names, triumphs, and tragedies of civilizations the desert swallowed. In Mali's Mandé communities, a Griot might spend decades mastering the epic of Sundiata Keita, the 13th century founder of the Mali Empire, whose verses describe Timbuktu's golden age with precision that matches archaeological finds. One particular passage led researchers to a ruined quarter near the Sankore Mosque, the Griot's description of a marketplace where scholars bought parchment with salt, aligned perfectly with excavation layers showing concentrated salt deposits beside manuscript fragments. The interplay between these spoken histories and hard evidence creates a fascinating dance of verification. When Mauritanian nomads shared tales of a city of black stones that drank the rain, archaeologists initially dismissed it as poetic metaphor until LiDAR scans uncovered the ruins of Wadain, where ingenious gutter systems channeled rare downpours into vast underground reservoirs. Similarly, Songhai Griots recounting Emperor Askia's pilgrimage to Mecca mentioned him stopping at the place of 7 wells. Satellite imagery later revealed a line of ancient wells spaced precisely where the oral histories placed them, marking what was likely a royal rest stop on the trans-Saharan route. These aren't just stories, they're waypoints to the past, carefully preserved across generations. Yet oral traditions also present intriguing challenges. The legend of Wagadu, said to have vanished after its rulers angered the gods, likely refers to the Ghana Empire's collapse, but details blur between historical events and mythic symbolism. When Dogon elders speak of their ancestors fleeing a great city of fire, archaeologists debate whether this describes the fall of jenné-jeno or a more ancient catastrophe. The brilliance of modern research lies in how it treats these narratives not as literal roadmaps but as cultural palimpsests, where factual accounts intertwine with moral lessons and cosmological beliefs. By cross-referencing Griots' timelines with radiocarbon dating or comparing trade goods mentioned in epics with excavated artifacts, scholars are learning to read between the lines of oral history. What emerges is a profound truth. These stories were never meant to be archives in the Western sense. They're living tapestries woven with practical knowledge about water sources, diplomatic alliances, and survival strategies. A Tuareg caravan guide's song about the salt road that bends like a scorpion's tail might encode directions to seasonal oases, while a sonic origin story's mention of the year the river slept could correspond to dendrochronology records showing a catastrophic drought in the 11th century. The Griots didn't just preserve history, they curated survival manuals for future generations. These oral threads stretch far beyond individual cities, connecting the Sahel's urban centers into a vast, pulsating network. The same epic that describes Timbuktu's scholars might name-check trading partners in Gao and Kumbi Saleh, revealing how ideas and goods flowed along routes now buried under dunes. When Songhai caravans carried gold north to Sijilmassa, they weren't just moving merchandise, they were transmitting architectural styles, religious ideas, and even culinary traditions. Excavations at medieval Ghanaian sites found Moroccan argan nut oil in cooking vessels, while Andalusian coins turned up near the Niger River bend, proof of connections spanning continents. As we piece together these fragments, archaeological, oral, and written, the Sahel's lost cities cease to be isolated wonders. They emerge as nodes in an ancient internet, linked by camel caravans that functioned like data packets, carrying innovations across the desert's vast expanse. The real revelation isn't just how these cities fell, but how profoundly they shaped one another while they thrived. And waiting beneath the next dune might be the missing link that shows us just how far their influence reached. The silent dunes of the Sahara hold more than just buried cities. They conceal the ghostly footprints of caravans that once wove a living web across the desert. Picture hundreds of camels moving in single file, their silhouettes stretched long against the sunset as they navigated by the stars, each step measured against the ever-shifting sands. These weren't just trade routes, they were the lifelines of empires, arteries pumping gold from West Africa's mines to Mediterranean ports, salt from Saharan basins to tropical forests, and ideas that shaped civilizations from the Niger River to the Nile. The sheer scale of this network staggers modern imaginations. A single caravan might carry enough gold to mint a year's worth of coins for a European kingdom, while a load of Saharan salt, so precious it was traded ounce for ounce with gold, could sustain an entire Malian village through the lean seasons. At the heart of this system lay a brutal calculus of risk and reward. Caravans departing from Sijilmassa in Morocco or Oudaghost in Mauritania faced a gauntlet of threats: sandstorms that erased trails, raiders who lurked near oases, and stretches so waterless that guides buried clay pots of emergency supplies along the route. The 14th century Arab traveler Ibn Battuta described crossing a 10-day stretch where the only water was what we carried in our skins, and camels so parched their moans echoed like ghosts. Yet the rewards justified the peril. A successful run from Timbuktu to Cairo could multiply a merchant's wealth 50-fold, especially if his cargo included the most coveted treasure of all, West African gold. The gold trade wasn't just about commerce, it reshaped global economies. Malian nuggets minted into dinars became the standard currency from Alexandria to Andalusia, their purity so renowned that Venetian traders tested other gold against them. But the real secret lay in the supply chain. At cities like Bambouk on the Senegal River, miners worked alluvial deposits using techniques unchanged for millennia, while royal overseers ensured every ounce reached designated trading hubs. The system was so precise that medieval Arab geographers wrote of scales in Ghana's markets that could measure to the grain, with taxes paid in gold dust scooped from brass bowls. What often goes untold is how these routes carried more than material wealth. Along with salt and gold came scholars carrying astronomical charts from Baghdad, artisans sharing new kiln designs for pottery, and religious reformers spreading interpretations of the Quran. A single caravan might transport Andalusian glassmakers, Jewish gem traders, and Songhai blacksmiths, all exchanging knowledge in the shade of a desert waystation. The ruins of Kumbi Saleh's market district bear this out. Excavations uncovered not just trade goods but fragments of medical texts, astrolabes, and even musical instruments from across 3 continents. The true marvel wasn't the distances covered but the cultural alchemy that resulted. When Moroccan architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili traveled with Mansa Musa's retinue after his legendary Hajj, he introduced Sudano-Sahelian architectural styles that blended North African geometry with local building techniques, giving rise to Timbuktu's iconic mud brick mosques. Similarly, the camel itself, introduced to the Sahara from Arabia around the 1st century, revolutionized trade much like container ships would centuries later, enabling longer hauls and heavier loads. Yet for all their sophistication, these routes hung by a thread. A single dried-up oasis or a shift in political alliances could doom a trading hub to obscurity. The ruins of Tadmeka in northern Mali tell this story vividly. Once a bustling entrepot where gold was minted into coins bearing the name of its Almoravid rulers, it dwindled to a ghost town when new powers redirected caravans elsewhere. Today, satellite images reveal its abandoned wells still lined with the grooves left by centuries of rope, a silent testament to how quickly the desert reclaims what it once nourished. As we trace these vanished highways through archaeology and oral histories, one truth becomes clear: the sand that buried the Sahel cities couldn't erase their connections. A shard of Chinese porcelain found in Ghana, a Ghanaian gold weight unearthed in Morocco, these fragments whisper of a world far more interconnected than we ever imagined, where the heartbeat of civilization pulsed not in isolated capitals but in the rhythm of camels' feet crossing the endless dunes. The shimmering gold that built the Sahel's greatest empires didn't come from vaults or treasuries, it was pried from the earth by bare hands in riverbeds and open pits, where miners worked under the relentless sun. These weren't industrial operations but seasonal endeavors, timed to the dry months when water levels dropped to reveal glittering deposits along the Niger and Senegal rivers. The gold that reached Timbuktu's markets and beyond began as flecks in clay, painstakingly separated using techniques passed down for generations. Crushed ore washed in wooden bowls, the heavier gold settling to the bottom while the lighter sediment was swept away. What made this system extraordinary wasn't just the quantity produced. Estimates suggest medieval West Africa supplied 2/3 of the Old World's gold, but how it circulated without minted coins. Instead, traders used standardized weights, often crafted from brass or bronze, to measure dust and nuggets with precision that impressed Arab and European merchants alike. The legends of Mansa Musa's wealth weren't exaggerations. When the Mali emperor embarked on his famous Hajj to Mecca in 1324, his caravan included hundreds of camels laden with gold, their loads so extravagant that his stop in Cairo reportedly depressed local gold prices for years. But Musa's pilgrimage wasn't just a display of opulence. It was a calculated diplomatic mission that put Mali on the global map. The gold he distributed along the way wasn't random largesse. It secured alliances with North African rulers and attracted scholars like the Andalusian poet and architect al-Saheli, who returned to Timbuktu to design its iconic Jingraba mosque. This was the real power of Sahelian gold. It didn't just buy goods, it bought influence, talent, and prestige that transformed regional powers into international players. Recent archaeological work has begun uncovering the physical traces of this golden age. In Senegal's Bambouk region, long considered the primary source of Mali's wealth, researchers using satellite imagery identified dozens of previously unknown mining pits. Some stretched over a mile wide, their terraced walls revealing generations of excavation. Even more telling were the smelting sites nearby, where slag piles contained traces of platinum, a telltale sign of alluvial gold deposits. These findings confirm accounts from 14th century traveler Ibn Battuta, who described gold nuggets the size of melon seeds being gathered from river banks. But the real surprise came when scientists analyzed metal artifacts from Moroccan and Egyptian markets. Their chemical fingerprints matched Bambouk's gold, proving the reach of these trade networks. Yet the true legacy of Sahelian gold lies not in the treasures themselves but in what they funded. The wealth flowing from these mines built more than palaces. It supported universities like Timbuktu's Sankore, where scholars debated astronomy and law under roofs funded by gold taxes. It paid for the translations of Greek and Persian texts that filled the city's libraries, and it underwrote the artistic flourishing seen in Songhai's intricate brass sculptures and Ghana's finely woven textiles. This was no resource curse. It was a virtuous cycle where material wealth fueled intellectual and cultural capital that outlasted the empires themselves. The final irony: many of these legendary goldfields are now exhausted, their locations lost until modern technology began rediscovering them. As archaeologists piece together maps of ancient mining districts, they're finding that the Sahel's greatest treasures weren't just dug from the earth. They were forged in the crossroads of trade, scholarship, and ambition that turned gold dust into lasting greatness. And somewhere beneath these dunes, the next revelation about this golden age waits to be unearthed. Beneath the blazing sun of the Sahel, where caravans once carried gold and salt, another treasure flourished: knowledge. Cities like Timbuktu and Chingti weren't just trading hubs. They were luminous centers of learning, where scholars gathered under the flickering light of oil lamps to debate the stars, compose poetry, and scribble groundbreaking medical treatises on parchment. The Sankore Madrasa in Timbuktu stood as the crown jewel of this intellectual golden age, its courtyard buzzing with students from as far as Fez and Cairo, all drawn by its reputation as the Oxford of the desert. Here, astronomy wasn't just theoretical, it guided desert navigation, while mathematics calculated fair trade ratios across currencies, from gold dust to cowrie shells. The libraries of these cities became safes for ideas. their shelves groaning under the weight of manuscripts covering everything from Islamic jurisprudence to herbal remedies for malaria. What makes these texts extraordinary isn't just their age. Some date back to the 12th century, but their startling sophistication. A medical manuscript from Timbuktu's Ahmed Baba Institute details surgical techniques for cataract removal, complete with illustrations of specialized tools. Another, written in vivid blue ink derived from crushed indigo, explores planetary motion with diagrams rivaling those of Copernicus's era. These weren't static relics but living documents, annotated over centuries by successive scholars who debated margins filled with questions like, "But what if the patient's fever persists?" Or compare this star chart to the observations from Cordoba in 1322. The libraries functioned as collaborative laboratories where knowledge evolved across generations, transcending borders and dynasties. Preserving this heritage has become a race against time. The very materials that safeguarded these manuscripts, goatskin bindings, vegetable-based inks, now face threats from humidity, insects, and the slow decay of organic matter. In Chingti's ancient libraries, families who have guarded manuscripts for 700 years store them in wooden chests lined with desert herbs to repel silverfish. Meanwhile, digital archivists work alongside local communities, using multispectral imaging to recover faded texts and 3D modeling to reconstruct crumbling pages. Each rescued page reveals surprises. A 14th century merchant's ledger listing prices for salt and enslaved people side by side, or a scholar's notebook comparing Greek and Songhai herbal remedies. These documents don't just belong to the past, they're blueprints for understanding cross-cultural exchange long before the term globalization existed. Yet for all their scholarly achievements, these cities faced constant threats. How did Timbuktu protect its libraries when empires clashed, or Chingti safeguard its scrolls as the desert encroached? The answer lies in a blend of ingenuity and sheer determination, from hidden chambers beneath mosques to networks of trusted custodians who smuggled manuscripts in camel saddles during invasions. The real marvel isn't just what these cities knew, but how fiercely they fought to preserve it. Rising like sentinels from the Sahel's vast emptiness, the fortress cities of Wadain and Agadez weren't just settlements, they were masterclasses in survival. Their massive stone walls, some 20 feet thick, served dual purposes, shielding inhabitants from Tuareg raiders while withstanding the desert's punishing winds. Walk through the ruins of Wadain today, and you'll notice how its entire layout was a defensive chessboard, narrow alleyways twisting abruptly to create kill zones, elevated watchtowers with sightlines stretching miles into the desert, and hidden cisterns ensuring water reserves stayed secret during sieges. Archaeologists mapping these structures found something ingenious. The walls weren't solid, but filled with rubble cores that absorbed the impact of projectiles, a technique later adopted by European castle builders centuries afterward. The real genius of Sahelian military architecture lay in its adaptability. In Agadez, the iconic mud brick minaret of the Grand Mosque doubled as a lookout post, its height offering early warnings of approaching threats. Excavations revealed an underground network connecting key buildings, not just escape routes but channels for moving reinforcements unseen. French conservation teams working on the site in the 1990s discovered that the city's famed red walls contained palm wood reinforcements, giving them flexibility during earthquakes while making them nearly impossible to scale. Even the placement of these cities was strategic. Agadez sat at the crossroads of 5 major trade routes, allowing it to control caravan traffic, while Wadain perched atop a mesa, forcing attackers to climb under a hail of arrows. But these fortifications tell a deeper story about the societies they protected. Unlike European castles designed for feudal lords, Sahelian strongholds were communal projects. At Wadain, every household contributed labor to wall maintenance as part of a civic duty system recorded in 17th century manuscripts. Defensive towers often housed shared granaries, blending military and social functions. Recent LiDAR scans of Agadez's outskirts show concentric rings of abandoned market stalls, proof that security enabled commerce, with traders setting up camp just outside the walls during peacetime. What fascinates modern researchers most are the subtle innovations born from necessity. The zigzag gates of Chinti, for instance, weren't just artistic, they broke up sandstorm's force while confusing invaders. Wind catchers built into walls cooled interior spaces without compromising defense. Even the iconic Sahelian mud bricks held secrets. Analysis shows they were mixed with fermented acacia sap, creating a material that hardened like concrete yet breathed to regulate indoor temperatures. These weren't just buildings, they were climate-responsive ecosystems sculpted from the desert itself. Beneath their martial exterior, these cities pulsed with spiritual significance. The same walls that repelled armies also marked sacred boundaries. Crossing Wadain's threshold meant entering a space where earth met heaven. Guards patrolling Agadez's ramparts at dawn would pause to face Mecca, their watchtowers aligning perfectly with prayer directions calculated by medieval astronomers. As the call to prayer echoed over the battlements, the fortress transformed into something transcendent, a reminder that in the Sahel, survival and sanctity were always intertwined. The Great Mosque of Jenné rises from Mali's floodplains like a mirage made solid, a towering testament to faith and human ingenuity, its sun-baked mud walls glowing amber at dawn. Unlike the stone cathedrals of Europe or the marble mosques of the Middle East, this architectural marvel breathes with the seasons. Every year, after the rains, the entire community gathers for the crépissage, a sacred ritual where fresh layers of clay plaster are hand-applied to the walls. Children carry water from the Bani River, elders mix the mortar with rice husks for strength, and young men climb palm wood beams protruding from the facade like giant stitches, smoothing the new surface with their palms. This isn't just maintenance, it's a living dialogue between architecture and earth, a bond renewed generation after generation for over 7 centuries. What makes Sahelian mosques so extraordinary isn't just their beauty, it's their sophisticated engineering. The protruding wooden Toron beams aren't merely decorative, they act as permanent scaffolding for repairs while regulating temperature by creating shade patterns that shift with the sun. Inside, the thick walls keep interiors 20 degrees cooler than the scorching streets outside, and strategically placed ventilation holes channel breezes like nature's air conditioning. The Great Mosque's design is so precise that during the Harmattan winds, sand swirls around but never into its prayer hall, a feat modern architects still study. These structures weren't imposed on the landscape, they emerged from it, using local materials and wisdom honed over millennia. Beyond their physical form, these mosques anchored the spiritual and social fabric of Sahelian life. In cities like Jenné, Timbuktu, and Agadez, the mosque wasn't just a place of worship but a classroom, courthouse, and community center rolled into one. Manuscripts from Timbuktu's Ahmed Baba Institute describe imams resolving trade disputes under the shade of the Sankore Mosque's arches, while traveling scholars gave astronomy lessons using the stars visible through its roof openings. The mosques also served as early warning systems. Their minarets doubled as watchtowers during raids, with coded drumbeats relaying messages across towns. Preserving these fragile masterpieces is a race against time and climate. Rising humidity from changing rainfall patterns threatens the structural integrity of mud bricks, while political instability has hampered conservation efforts. UNESCO ongoing work with local masons combines ancient techniques with modern science, using soil analysis to replicate original clay mixtures and training apprentices in traditional building methods. In Jenne, a team of female artisans, once excluded from construction, now leads workshops on decorative plasterwork, ensuring these skills endure. The challenge is delicate: how to reinforce foundations without compromising authenticity, or install discreet lighting without altering the sacred ambience. The true legacy of these mosques lies in the hands that shaped them. Picture a 14-year-old apprentice in 1520, kneading clay with his feet as his father explains how to test its plasticity by rolling it into ropes. Or a woman in 17th century Timbuktu weaving palm frond mats for the mosque floor, her patterns encoding blessings in geometric code. These weren't anonymous laborers but custodians of a living tradition, their calloused palms pressing prayers into the very walls. Today, when a trader pauses midday in Jenne's marketplace to hear the muezzins call echo off those sun-warmed walls, he stands in the same spot where his ancestors gathered, not just to pray, but to celebrate births, debate harvests, and reaffirm their bond with this unforgiving yet generous land. As we trace the fingerprints left in these walls, we glimpse a civilization that measured wealth not in gold but in community and resilience. The same hands that built these mosques also tended the gardens that fed their cities, forged the tools that carved their manuscripts, and carried the goods that connected them to the wider world. Their daily lives, woven from faith, trade, and an intimate knowledge of their environment, offer the next chapter in understanding how the Sahel's people thrived where others saw only barrenness. Stepping into the homes of the Sahel's lost cities means brushing away centuries of dust to reveal lives lived in vibrant detail. Excavations in places like Jenné-Jeno uncover neighborhoods where circular mud brick houses clustered around shared courtyards, their walls still bearing the imprints of woven mats that once cushioned floors. These weren't primitive huts but carefully designed spaces, raised sleeping platforms to avoid scorpions, niches for oil lamps, and ventilation shafts that funneled cool evening air indoors. At Kumbi Saleh, archaeologists found traces of brightly painted geometric murals, suggesting homes were more than shelters. They were canvases for self-expression. Even the humblest dwellings tell stories of comfort and community, like the discovery of a child's clay toy camel in Taita, its worn edges smoothed by small hands centuries ago. The rhythm of daily life pulsed loudest in the markets. Imagine the clamor of Gao's trading plaza at sunrise, where merchants from a dozen cultures haggled over goods piled on woven grass mats. Excavated weights made of brass and stone, some as small as a pea, others as heavy as a mango, hint at a sophisticated system of measures. Potsherds stained with indigo and kola nut residue reveal bustling dye and spice stalls, while cowrie shells unearthed near market squares served as small change in an economy that spanned continents. At Timbuktu's Sankore market, scholars bartered manuscripts for parchment, their negotiations likely accompanied by the scent of sizzling millet cakes from nearby food vendors. These weren't just places to shop, they were stages where languages, fashions, and ideas collided. Craftsmanship thrived in these urban hubs. In the ironworking quarter of Gen-Geno, slag heaps testify to furnaces burning day and night, producing tools that shaped empires. A single workshop site yielded broken molds for casting arrowheads alongside delicate jewelry, proving metalworkers catered to warriors and nobles alike. Textile fragments preserved in the dry air of the Adrar show intricate patterns, some resembling Berber motifs, others echoing designs from the Niger Delta, evidence of a fashion seen as diverse as the people who wore them. Even mundane objects like grinding stones tell tales of innovation. Those found in Tegdayost have wear patterns suggesting they doubled as salt crushers and grain mills, a clever dual use in a land where every resource mattered. What truly connected these cities wasn't just trade goods but the flow of people and traditions. A cooking pot excavated in Eyuda Coast contained charred remains of couscous, a North African staple, alongside fingerprints matching those on local sonic pottery, proof of culinary fusion. Burial sites near Kumbi Saleh reveal Muslim merchants buried facing Mecca beside animist traders interred with iron staffs, their graves aligned in parallel rows. This cultural mosaic extended beyond death, suggesting a society where differences coexisted through mutual respect or at least pragmatic tolerance. The echoes of these interactions ripple across the region. Glass beads from Egypt threaded onto leather cords in Mali, Songhai musical instruments depicted in Moroccan frescoes, each artifact a silent witness to connections that defied the desert's isolation. As caravans departed with their loads of gold and salt, they carried something more precious, the shared rhythms of urban life that turned scattered oases into a constellation of civilization under the Sahel's endless sky. The golden threads of Sahelian trade didn't stop at the desert's edge. They stretched across continents, weaving together worlds that history books often keep separate. In the ruins of Gao's market district, archaeologists unearthed Roman glassware alongside Malian gold weights, proof that Saharan caravans bridged the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa centuries before European explorers arrived. These weren't random trinkets lost to time but deliberate imports, luxury items like delicate perfume vials from Alexandria and olive oil amphorae stamped with North African workshop marks, all painstakingly transported across thousands of miles of dunes. The same winds that carried Saharan dust to the Atlantic also carried ideas. Berber merchants introduced the camel saddle design that revolutionized desert transport, while Sahelian metallurgists shared advanced iron smelting techniques with Mediterranean blacksmiths. Religious and artistic exchanges flowed just as freely as trade goods. The distinctive pointed arches of Timbuktu's mosques mirror Persian architectural styles, likely brought by scholars traveling along the trans-Saharan routes. Meanwhile, Songhai artisans adapted Islamic calligraphy into stunning geometric patterns for leather book covers, a fusion seen in manuscripts where Quranic verses border traditional West African symbols. Even spiritual practices blended. Amulets excavated in Kumbi Saleh contain verses from the Quran written on parchment alongside local protective herbs, showing how Islam absorbed indigenous beliefs rather than erasing them. These weren't one-sided influences but dynamic conversations, with Sahelian cities contributing as much as they borrowed. The scale of these connections becomes startling when examining specific artifacts. A brass astrolabe found near Agadez bears inscriptions in both Arabic and the Tuareg Tifinagh script, its star charts calibrated for Saharan latitudes. Chemical analysis revealed its metal came from Spanish mines, crafted by a Jewish instrument maker in Morocco before being traded south, a single object embodying 3 continents' expertise. Similarly, textile fragments from Chinti show indigo dye molecules identical to those used in Syrian workshops, suggesting either shared techniques or direct trade in materials. These weren't isolated curiosities. They represent a sustained dialogue between civilizations that modern scholarship is only beginning to map. Why, then, did these thriving crossroads eventually fade into silence? The answer lies in a perfect storm of environmental shifts and human decisions. As the Sahara's southern frontier crept steadily forward between the 12th and 15th centuries, wells that sustained caravans vanished beneath the dunes. Political upheavals in North Africa disrupted trade networks. The fall of Granada in 1492 and Ottoman expansion redirected Mediterranean attention away from Saharan routes. Most crucially, the rise of Atlantic shipping offered faster, cheaper alternatives to camel caravans. Why risk a 2-month desert crossing when Portuguese ships could deliver goods in weeks? The Sahel cities didn't collapse overnight but starved slowly, their lifeblood of trade thinning with each passing decade until only echoes remained. Yet their legacy lingers in unexpected places. The same gold that once crossed the desert now fills European cathedral altars, melted down from Malian nuggets into gilded reliquaries. Persian poetry manuscripts in Tehran's libraries rest on paper made from West African cotton. Even the humble peanut, domesticated along the Niger River, became a global staple through these very trade routes. The sands may have reclaimed the cities, but their influence endures, a reminder that no civilization, no matter how mighty, exists in isolation. And as we trace these faded connections, we're left to wonder what other forgotten dialogues between continents still lie buried, waiting for their stories to be told. The demise of the Sahel's great cities wasn't the result of a single cataclysm but a slow unraveling, where environmental pressures, economic shifts, and political fractures combined like strands of a rope fraying over time. Climate change stands as the most insidious culprit cause. Drilled from Lake Chad's ancient sediments reveal layers of pollen from lush grasses abruptly replaced by dust, marking the onset of droughts that stretched for decades. Cities like Kumbi Saleh, once sustained by reliable monsoon rains, watched as their wells turned to dust and their farmlands baked under an unrelenting sun. Yet the desert's advance didn't act alone. As trade routes withered due to dwindling water sources, the gold and salt that fueled these urban economies began flowing along new paths, bypassing former hubs for greener oases. The Almoravid conquests of the 11th century accelerated this shift, redirecting caravans toward Moroccan-controlled ports and leaving once thriving markets eerily quiet. Political instability compounded these crises. The Mali Empire's slow fragmentation allowed regional warlords to choke off trade with arbitrary tolls, while the Songhai Empire's collapse after the Moroccan invasion in 1591 left a power vacuum that bandits and raiders eagerly filled. In Timbuktu, manuscripts from the era describe scholars fleeing with their precious books as armies looted the city, their ink-stained hands carrying not just knowledge but the seeds of cultural amnesia. Even ingenious adaptations had limits. When Jenné's engineers built deeper wells to combat dropping water tables, they couldn't foresee how saltwater intrusion would eventually poison their last reserves. Modern parallels are impossible to ignore. Like the Sahelian cities that relied on a single trade commodity, today's resource-dependent towns face similar vulnerability when markets shift. The same climate stresses that dried up medieval wells now threaten megacities from Cape Town to Chennai, while political conflicts disrupt supply chains just as they once severed trans-Saharan routes. Yet there's hope in these ancient lessons. The cities that endured longest, like Agadez with its diversified economy or Timbuktu with its decentralized manuscript collections, were those that didn't put all their treasures in one basket. Their ruins whisper a warning. Civilizations that rigidly cling to outdated systems crumble, while those that adapt, however painfully, leave echoes for the future to decipher. Into this landscape of loss stepped the first European explorers, lured by legends of golden rooftops and libraries filled with forbidden knowledge. Men like French adventurer René Caillié, who disguised himself as an Arab scholar to reach Timbuktu in 1828, or Heinrich Barth, the German geographer who meticulously documented Gao's ruins while surviving assassination attempts. Their accounts often tinged with disappointment at finding crumbling mud walls instead of glittering spires, nonetheless cracked open the door to rediscovery. What they couldn't grasp was that the true treasure wasn't gold beneath their feet, but the stories waiting to be unearthed, stories of resilience written in the very bricks that the desert had failed to erase. When European explorers first ventured into the Sahel in the 19th century, they arrived armed not just with compasses and sketchbooks, but with deeply ingrained myths. Chief among them, the idea that Africa's interior was an untamed wilderness devoid of history. Men like Heinrich Barth, a German geographer who spent 5 years traversing the Sahara in the 1850s, stood awestruck before the crumbling walls of Gao and Timbuktu, their grandeur defying everything he'd been taught. His meticulous sketches of triple-arched mosques and detailed notes on Songhai administrative systems should have shattered colonial fantasies of a dark continent. Yet even Barth couldn't fully escape his era's prejudices, framing these achievements as anomalies rather than part of a broader African urban tradition. His accounts, though groundbreaking, were often buried in academic journals, while sensationalized tales of lost cities and mysterious ruins fed the public's appetite for exoticism rather than truth. The biases of these early observers shaped archaeology for generations. French colonial administrators in Mali, convinced that monumental architecture required foreign influence, attributed Jenné's Great Mosque to Middle Eastern builders despite local oral histories naming Malian masons. British expeditions in Mauritania dismissed evidence of advanced metallurgy at Kumbi Saleh, assuming such technology must have been imported. These weren't just oversights, they were active erasures, part of a wider effort to justify colonial rule by portraying Africans as peoples without history, waiting for European civilization. Even the term lost cities itself carries baggage, implying these metropolises were abandoned rather than deliberately depopulated by slave raids, resource depletion, and the very colonial systems that claimed to discover them. Yet the most damaging legacy wasn't just misinterpretation, it was neglect. While Egypt's pyramids drew armies of archaeologists, Timbuktu's manuscripts molded in private libraries, and Ghana's earthen ruins crumbled under looters' picks. Budgets for African archaeology paled next to digs in Greece or Mesopotamia, leaving vital sites unprotected. When British archaeologist Raymond Morney published the first comprehensive survey of West African urbanism in 1961, his work was dismissed by peers who couldn't conceive of complex societies beyond the Nile. The few who did engage, like French researcher Serge Robert, often focused on proving external influences rather than indigenous innovation, asking who taught them. Instead of how did they do this themselves, today, a new generation of African scholars is rewriting these narratives. Nigerian archaeologist Akin Ogunduran's work on Yoruba urbanism has revealed sprawling pre-colonial cities that rivaled medieval Paris in scale. Malian historian Ismail Diadie Haidara spent decades tracking down Timbuktu's scattered manuscripts, proving the city's intellectual vibrancy was no fluke but part of a regional tradition. In Senegal, Dr. Ibrahima Thayo uses soil chemistry to reconstruct ancient trade routes, showing how local networks predated Arab contact. Their research does more than correct the record, it restores agency, revealing how Sahelian cities weren't passive recipients of foreign ideas but active participants in global exchanges. The tools of this reckoning are as diverse as the scholars wielding them. LiDAR scans by Ghanaian teams have uncovered massive stone foundations near the Volta River, upending assumptions about forest zone urbanization. Linguists like Mauritania's Mohamedou Oudmoulay trace the evolution of sonic honorifics in medieval trade contracts, proving sophisticated legal frameworks existed long before European contact. Perhaps most powerfully, local archaeologists increasingly partner with griots, weaving oral traditions with stratigraphy to create multi-layered histories. When a Tuareg elder's song about the salt road that vanished under blue sand led researchers to a buried caravan stop in Niger last year, it wasn't just a discovery, it was validation of knowledge systems colonialism tried to silence. This intellectual reclamation faces stark challenges. Looting and climate change threaten sites faster than they can be documented, while funding disparities persist. A single season excavating Roman Britain often costs more than a decade of Sahelian fieldwork. Yet the momentum is unmistakable. From university seminars in Bamako to YouTube channels run by young Sahrawi historians, Africans are seizing control of their past, not as footnotes to someone else's story, but as architects of their own narrative. The desert was never empty, it was merely waiting for the right voices to listen. Today's Sahelian archaeologists don't just dig, they unravel centuries of silence, one careful brushstroke at a time. Take Dr. Aisha Diallo from Mali, who combines satellite imagery with oral histories from Dogon elders to locate forgotten trading posts along the Niger River bend. Her team's recent discovery of a 12th century iron smelting village overturned assumptions about pre-colonial technology. The furnace designs they uncovered used less charcoal than European models of the same era, showcasing an early understanding of sustainable resource use. Meanwhile, in Niger, Dr. Boubacar Ibrahim's all-local excavation team has rewritten the story of the Kanem-Bornu Empire by mapping irrigation channels beneath the dunes, proving these so-called desert kingdoms were hydraulic experts who farmed vast oases now buried under sand. Their work isn't just about correcting the record. It's about restoring pride. Every shard of pottery catalogued by Mauritanian student volunteers at Chinti's medieval universities becomes evidence of their ancestors' intellectual ambition. The methodology behind these breakthroughs is as innovative as the findings themselves. In Senegal, Dr. Fatimata Sarr employs 3D modeling to reconstruct the original pigments of faded mosque murals, collaborating with contemporary artists to revive traditional paint recipes. Over in northern Chad, archaeologists like Hassan Kossi have turned to nomadic communities as living archives. Their ancestral migration routes often align perfectly with ancient caravan paths visible only on infrared scans. This fusion of high-tech and hyper-local approaches reveals what old colonial reports missed: the subtle genius of Sahelian urban planning. At Timbuktu's recently unearthed market district, the placement of shaded rest areas every 300 paces matches descriptions in 14th century merchant diaries, proof of deliberate design for traveler comfort in extreme heat. What makes this new wave of research truly transformative is its democratization of knowledge. Unlike past expeditions led by foreign academics, projects like the Jenné-Jeno Oral History Initiative train Malian teens to document their grandparents' stories, creating a grassroots archive that informs archaeological digs. When Burkina Faso's Dr. Issa Kone discovered a previously unknown city wall near Ouagadougou last year, it was a local farmer's childhood memory of the old stones that guided him to the site. These collaborations aren't just practical, they're philosophical, challenging who gets to define history's worth. As Mauritanian scholar Leila Mint Ahmed argues, a cooking pot found in a woman's kitchen tells us as much about empire as a king's scepter does, maybe more. This intellectual reclamation reverberates far beyond academia. In Bamako's vibrant art scene, painters like Abdoulaye Konaté create tapestries woven with indigo-dyed threads and replica medieval trade beads, visually reconnecting Mali's present to its mercantile past. Nigerian musicians have resurrected the gonki, a lute-like instrument depicted on 15th century Songhai pottery, filling concert halls with melodies unheard for generations. Even urban planners look to the past. Nouakchot's new water conservation project draws directly from ancient fagaras, the underground channels that sustained cities like Teikta. The most poignant revival might be in northern Senegal, where Wolof chefs have reconstructed recipes from charred cookware found at Tekra ruins, serving dishes like millet couscous with dried perch at pop-up dinners that taste like edible time travel. These threads, archaeological, artistic, culinary, weave a new narrative where the Sahel cities aren't graveyards of failure but blueprints for resilience. When a teenager in Gao traces her finger over a 700-year-old Quran board in the local museum, she's not just seeing history, she's touching proof that her ancestors shaped the world long before borders divided it. The sands that once buried these stories are now the very canvas on which a richer, truer past is being rewritten, one where every shard of pottery and every line of poetry reclaims a legacy that was never truly lost, just waiting for the right hands to uncover it. The golden mystique of the Sahel's lost cities has long escaped the confines of history books, spilling into the vibrant realm of popular culture. Films like Abderrahmane Sissoko's Timbuktu, nominated for an Academy Award, don't just depict the city's past but reanimate its spirit, showing Malian fishermen reciting medieval poetry as jihadists patrol the dunes, a poignant reminder of how deeply heritage persists even in conflict. The movie's haunting scenes of manuscripts being smuggled to safety mirror real-life efforts to preserve Timbuktu's literary treasures, blurring the line between art and activism. Meanwhile, blockbusters like Black Panther drew inspiration from Sahelian architecture, with Wakanda's towering structures echoing the mud-brick majesty of Jenné's mosques. Hollywood's tribute to a legacy too often overlooked. Music, too, carries the Sahel's echoes. Malian blues legend Ali Farka Touré's guitar riffs mimic the cadence of ancient griot tales, while Tuareg bands like Tinarouan weave electric chords with lyrics about caravan routes and forgotten oases. In Niger, the haunting melodies of the Zama flute evoke the same winds that once carried salt traders' songs across the dunes. These artistic homages aren't just nostalgia, they're acts of reclamation. When Senegalese hip-hop artist Didier Awadi samples Sundiata Keita's epic in his tracks, or when Mauritanian singer Noura Mint Semali belts lyrics about Chinti scholars, they're stitching severed threads of identity back together. The Sahel's cities have also become symbols in the Pan-African imagination. For intellectuals like Cheikh Anta Diop, the ruins of Kumbi Saleh weren't just archaeological sites but proof of Africa's pre-colonial sophistication, fueling movements to decolonize history. Contemporary artists like Abdoulaye Konaté create sprawling textile works mapping medieval trade routes, turning gallery walls into classrooms. Even fashion draws from this wellspring. Designers like Mollys Awamete incorporate sonic embroidery patterns rediscovered in Tegdayast's ruins, making heritage wearable. Yet for all this celebration, a pressing question remains: how do we safeguard what's left? Looters still chisel away at Jenné's artifacts, while climate change threatens to erase entire sites with rising temperatures and erratic rains. The answer lies in blending old and new, employing drones to monitor vulnerable ruins while training local guardians in traditional conservation techniques. In Timbuktu, librarians digitize manuscripts but also teach children to transcribe them by hand, ensuring the knowledge lives in both servers and souls. The real challenge isn't just preserving stones and parchments, but reigniting the living connections they represent, because the Sahel's cities aren't just relics. They're mirrors reflecting how much has been lost and beacons lighting the way to what could still be saved. Preserving the Sahel's ancient cities is a race against time and human hands. Looters armed with metal detectors strip archaeological sites bare under cover of darkness, selling fragments of history to the highest bidder. In Mali alone, officials estimate thousands of artifacts vanish yearly. Medieval coins melted down for scrap, terracotta figurines smuggled into private collections, even entire sections of mud brick walls hacked away for their decorative motifs. The damage isn't just theft, it's erasure. Each stolen object carries clues about trade networks, craftsmanship, and daily life that can't be recovered once severed from their context. At the ruins of Gao and Jenne, deep gouges mar the earth where treasure hunters dug haphazardly, destroying stratigraphic layers that could have revealed centuries of occupation. Yet the desert itself poses an equally relentless threat. Wind erosion scours delicate mud brick structures, while rare but violent rainstorms melt ancient walls like sugar cubes. Satellite images of Timbuktu show the Niger River's gradual encroachment, its banks eating away at neighborhoods that once housed scholars. In Chad's Ennedi massif, prehistoric rock art depicting giraffes and chariots fades under a relentless onslaught of sand-blasting winds. Conservationists face heartbreaking choices. Should they rebuild crumbling structures using modern materials, risking historical inaccuracy, or let them decay to maintain authenticity? At Jenné's Great Mosque, the annual replastering ritual now incorporates synthetic stabilizers to help the structure withstand increasingly intense rains, a compromise between tradition and necessity. Against these challenges, grassroots initiatives are writing hopeful counter-narratives. In Mauritania's Chinti, local families who have safeguarded manuscript libraries for generations now work with UNESCO to digitize pages before the ink crumbles. Malian volunteers patrol the Bandiagara escarpment, documenting looting damage with smartphone apps that alert antiquities authorities. One standout success is the Timbuktu Manuscripts Project, where scholars trained community members in restoration techniques, using camel hair brushes to clean parchment, creating acid-free storage boxes from local materials. When jihadists torched libraries in 2012, these efforts ensured over 90% of the texts survived, hidden in basements and smuggled to safety in milk crates. The ethical dilemmas run deep. Excavating sacred sites like the royal tombs of the Song risks violating cultural taboos, while digging near inhabited areas like the modern town clinging to by Sahel's edges displaces living communities for the sake of studying the dead. Archaeologists increasingly adopt participatory approaches, letting local elders guide where and how excavations proceed. In Niger's Azlik, Tuareg leaders helped design a museum showcasing artifacts from the medieval copper mines, ensuring their ancestors' labor isn't reduced to sterile display cases. Digital tools offer groundbreaking solutions without disturbing fragile sites. Laser scans create millimeter-perfect 3D models of Agadez's minaret, allowing virtual tours while the original weathers safely in place. AI analyzes pottery shard patterns across the Sahel, reconstructing trade routes invisible to the human eye. Most poignant are oral history projects recording Griots chants about cities like Ouagadougou, preserving not just facts but the cadences and emotions that textbooks flatten. These technologies don't replace physical preservation, they amplify it, ensuring that even if the last mud brick crumbles, the stories won't. The fight to save the Sahel's heritage isn't about freezing cities in time, it's about honoring their legacy as living, evolving entities. When a Mauritanian weaver incorporates medieval motifs into contemporary textiles or a Malian rapper samples 800-year-old poetry, they prove that the past's most vital preservation happens not behind glass, but in the hands and voices of those who still find meaning in its echoes. Virtual reconstructions are breathing new life into the Sahel's buried cities, transforming crumbling ruins into vibrant digital landscapes where history feels within reach. Cutting-edge 3D modeling techniques now allow archaeologists to rebuild entire neighborhoods pixel by pixel, using everything from drone surveys to centuries-old manuscripts as blueprints. One stunning example is the digital resurrection of Gao's medieval markets, a project that combined laser scans of surviving foundations with descriptions from Arab chroniclers like al-Bakri. The result, a bustling virtual plaza where viewers can navigate through stalls piled with golden ingots, watch blacksmiths forge iron tools, and even hear reconstructed Soninke and Tamashek dialects haggling over prices. These aren't just pretty simulations, they're research tools that revealed how Gao's circular market design optimized shade and airflow, a masterclass in desert urban planning lost to time. The magic lies in the details. At the University of Cape Town's Sahelian Cities project, researchers used VR headsets to test sightlines between Timbuktu's mosques and libraries, proving scholars could signal each other across rooftops, likely how manuscripts were transported during emergencies. Meanwhile, the Digital Jenné initiative painstakingly recreated the original pigments of the Great Mosque's facade by analyzing microscopic paint fragments, then projected the vibrant colors onto its present-day, weathered surface during a nighttime light show that left locals weeping. These projects do more than reconstruct buildings. They reconnect communities with architectural ancestors, letting grandmothers point to virtual replicas of houses their great-grandparents might have inhabited. What makes these digital revivals truly groundbreaking is their democratizing power. Gone are the days when understanding ancient cities required expensive travel or privileged access to excavation sites. Now, a teenager in Dakar can explore Kumbi Saleh's royal quarter through a smartphone app, while classrooms in Berlin take VR field trips to Gen-Geno's iron workshops. The British Museum's collaborative project with Malian historians even lets users handle 3D scanned artifacts from Songhai-era scales to Tuareg swords that would otherwise be locked behind glass cases. This accessibility sparks unexpected discoveries. When a virtual tour of Tegdeost's copper smelters went viral, retired miners in Mauritania recognized furnace designs similar to those their fathers used, revealing an unbroken technological thread spanning 8 centuries. Beyond education, these reconstructions are rewriting academic debates. The controversial floating city theory about Timbuktu, long dismissed as legend, gained traction when hydrology models showed how seasonal floods could have created canal networks matching descriptions in 14th century texts. Similarly, VR walkthroughs of Kano's medieval dye pits revealed hidden drainage channels that explain how the city processed textiles on an industrial scale. Each digital breakthrough peels back another layer of misunderstanding, proving these weren't isolated outposts but nodes in a sophisticated urban network. As we toggle between past and present with a swipe of a finger, these virtual cities become more than academic exercises, they're bridges across time. Standing in today's sparse Sahel, it's hard to envision the lush gardens that once surrounded Agadez or the bustling ports along the Niger River. But when VR recreations show rainy season floodwaters lapping at Jenné's walls, just as they did when Mansa Musa visited, the gap between centuries narrows. These digital echoes remind us that the Sahel's forgotten metropolises weren't failures of civilization, but triumphs of adaptation, their lessons on water management, cultural exchange, and resilience resonating louder than ever in our climate-challenged world. The sand may have claimed their physical forms, but technology is ensuring their stories remain indelible, inviting us all to wander their resurrected streets and rediscover our shared human ingenuity. The Sahel's ancient cities whisper urgent lessons to our modern world, revealing how civilizations thrive or collapse in the face of environmental and social upheaval. Consider the ingenious fagaras of Teikta, underground channels that funneled precious groundwater to fields and homes, allowing the city to flourish where surface wells ran dry. Today, engineers in drought-stricken regions from California to Cape Town are reviving similar techniques, proving that the past holds blueprints for our climate crisis. These weren't just feats of survival, they were triumphs of observation where generations of Sahelian farmers adapted to subtle shifts in rainfall patterns long before the term climate change existed. Their legacy challenges us to rethink sustainability, not as high-tech solutions imposed from above, but as wisdom honed through centuries of intimate dialogue with the land. Globalization, often seen as a modern phenomenon, finds its mirror in the Sahel's medieval trade networks. The bustling markets of Gao and Timbuktu thrived on cultural exchange, where Berber merchants, Songhai artisans, and Jewish scholars exchanged goods and ideas across continents. Yet these cities also faced the pitfalls of interconnectedness when Moroccan invaders disrupted trans-Saharan routes. Economies built on single commodities like gold collapsed overnight. Sound familiar? The parallel to today's fragile supply chains is impossible to ignore. The Sahel's history warns against over-reliance on any one trade partner or resource, offering a case study in diversification that resonates from Wall Street to emerging markets. Perhaps the most striking lesson lies in governance. The Ghana Empire's system of provincial governors, each granted autonomy to adapt laws to local conditions, created stability across diverse landscapes. Meanwhile, Timbuktu's Sankore scholars developed legal frameworks that balanced Islamic jurisprudence with indigenous customs, a model of pluralism that feels strikingly contemporary. These weren't perfect societies. Slavery and inequality marred their achievements, but their ability to blend innovation with tradition holds clues for modern policymakers navigating polarized worlds. As the desert sands reveal these stories, they invite us to see history not as a static record but as a living conversation. The same winds that buried Kumbi Saleh now carry microplastics. The caravan routes that spread ideas face new borders. Yet the Sahel's enduring truth remains. Civilizations that listen to their environment, value diverse voices, and adapt without losing their core identity outlast the storms. The next chapter of this story isn't etched in ruins. It's waiting to be written by those who dare to learn from the echoes beneath the dunes. The mysteries of the Sahel's lost cities don't have to stay buried. There are countless ways to keep exploring these stories long after this video ends. For those hungry to dive deeper, start with The Golden Rhinoceros by François-Xavier Fauvel, a captivating book that reads like a detective novel as it pieces together Africa's medieval history through artifacts and eyewitness accounts. Documentary lovers shouldn't miss The Manuscripts of Timbuktu, which follows the daring rescue of thousands of texts during the 2012 conflict, showcasing scholars racing against time to preserve irreplaceable knowledge. If you prefer immersive digital experiences, explore the British Museum's online collection of Sahelian artifacts, where high-resolution scans let you examine everything from Ghanaian gold weights to Songhai-era astrolabes up close. For travelers drawn to these landscapes, visiting Sahelian heritage sites requires equal parts wonder and responsibility. Start in Mali's Jenné, where the Great Mosque's annual replastering festival turns conservation into a community celebration. Just be sure to hire local guides like those from the Jenné Patrimoine Association, whose fees directly support preservation. In Mauritania's Chinti, overnight in one of the ancient library houses, where families still safeguard manuscripts under starry desert skies. A pro tip: travel light years beyond the usual souvenir shops by supporting artisan cooperatives like Timbuktu's Atoll, Abubakar Sadiq, where metalworkers craft replicas of medieval tools using traditional techniques passed down through generations. You don't need a plane ticket to contribute to uncovering the Sahel's secrets. Citizen science projects like Transcribing Timbuktu invite volunteers to help digitize handwritten manuscripts by translating Arabic and Ajami scripts from home. Over at Zooniverse's Saharan Sands initiative, anyone can analyze satellite imagery to flag potential archaeological sites for professional teams to investigate. Even social media plays a role. Follow hashtags like #SahelHeritage to join global conversations where historians, archaeologists, and locals share discoveries in real time, from newfound rock art to grassroots conservation wins. Our journey through these echoes beneath the dunes has revealed more than forgotten walls. It's uncovered a living dialogue between past and present. From Timbuktu's scholars debating under the stars to Gao's gold markets buzzing with languages from 3 continents, these cities thrived not in isolation but through connection. Their ruins aren't tombstones but classrooms, teaching us about resilience in the face of shifting climates and the enduring power of shared knowledge. Whether you're scrolling through digitized manuscripts or standing where caravans once camped under the same constellations, you're now part of this story, one that keeps unfolding, one grain of sand at a time. The story of the Sahel's buried cities is more than a tale of rise and fall. It's a revelation that rewrites the very map of human history. These weren't isolated outposts clinging to the desert's edge, but thriving metropolises where gold and ideas flowed as freely as the Niger's seasonal floods. From Timbuktu's scholars debating under the stars to Gao's merchants weighing salt against gold with scales precise enough to rival modern instruments, these cities were once the beating heart of a connected world. Their ruins challenge old stereotypes, proving Africa's past was never a void waiting to be filled by outsiders, but a vibrant tapestry of innovation, resilience, and exchange that stretched from the Mediterranean to the forests of Guinea. What makes their rediscovery so urgent isn't just the corrected historical record, it's the lessons they offer for our own era of climate uncertainty and cultural crossroads. The same fagaras that channeled groundwater to Takta's fields could inspire today's drought solutions, while Gen-Geno's egalitarian urban design hints at alternatives to modern inequality. These cities didn't just adapt to their environment, they danced with it, building societies that balanced commerce with scholarship, tradition with experimentation. Their gradual disappearance beneath the sands mirrors our own challenges, not as a prophecy of doom, but as a reminder that civilizations endure when they listen to both the land and their diverse voices. As Malian historian Ismail Didier Haidara once reflected, a people without memory are like a tree without roots. They may stand tall for a season, but the first storm will topple them. The Sahel's buried cities are those roots, reaching deep into time to anchor us in a richer, more nuanced understanding of our shared humanity. Their echoes remind us that greatness isn't measured by the height of skyscrapers, but by the depth of collective wisdom left for future generations. So what do you think? Could the secrets of these lost cities hold answers for our own urban challenges? Have you ever stood where history whispers just beneath your feet? Share your thoughts below, and if this journey through the dunes has sparked your curiosity, dive deeper with the links in the description. The past isn't finished speaking yet, and every shard of pottery, every faded manuscript, every wind-worn wall has another story waiting to be heard. The sand may rise and fall, but the echoes, they never truly fade.